In a small, rundown neighborhood where the streets are cracked and the buildings seem to lean toward one another as if trying to hold each other up, Sam woke up early. The air was thick with the weight of financial troubles, and as he opened his eyes, the sounds of his mother Emily, speaking anxiously on the phone, drifted into his room. Her voice, usually soft and nurturing, had a tremor in it as she spoke with the landlord about overdue rent. Sam could hear her desperate attempts to explain that they'd pay next month, hoping it would be enough to hold off the inevitable eviction. The apartment they lived in wasn't much, barely enough space for the two of them to breathe. The walls were covered with peeling paint. The old pipes groaned at every turn, and the windows rattled with the chill of the outside world. Sam had long grown accustomed to the creaking floors and the cold drafts that sneaked in through cracks around the windows. There was a time when these small imperfections used to bother him, but over the years, he had learned to live with them. Just like he had learned to live with the quiet tension in the air that was always there, hanging like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Sam slowly got out of bed, his feet meeting the cold, worn floor. He could hear the distant hum of a car engine outside, a sound that had long become background noise in his life. He didn't mind it, though. What bothered him more was the feeling that their lives were spiraling, that things would never get better, and that no matter how hard his mother worked or how much he tried to help, they were always just one step away from falling apart. Emily was already in the kitchen, trying to prepare something for breakfast. Sam saw the uneaten cereal in front of her. She never had time to eat, always too worried about their next bill, the next deadline. Today, she looked more tired than usual. Her face, once full of energy and warmth, now seemed gaunt, the lines of worry etched deeper into her skin. Sam could tell that the pressure of trying to make ends meet was taking a toll on her, and he hated seeing her like this. He grabbed the bread and the peanut butter, the simplest lunch he could prepare. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him going through the day. As he spread the peanut butter on the slice of bread, he thought about school, the constant cycle of bullies and forgotten homework, and how every day felt like a struggle to simply be noticed, to feel like he mattered. But today was different. Today, something else tugged at him, pulling his attention away from the usual routine. As he stepped outside to make his way to school, the morning sun was hidden behind a thick veil of gray clouds. The wind nipped at his face, and he shivered in the thin jacket his mother had managed to buy for him a year ago. It wasn't much, but it kept him warm enough. Walking down the cracked sidewalk, Sam's mind wandered to the day ahead, but something caught his eye. Sitting against the wall of a nearby building was an old man, his face weathered by time, his clothes tattered and worn. The man's eyes were closed, his face slack with exhaustion, but there was something about him that made Sam pause. It wasn't just the man's appearance, it was the way he seemed to fit in with the world around him, invisible and forgotten. The man didn't ask for help, didn't make a sound, but Sam could feel the weight of his loneliness. Without thinking, Sam reached into his backpack and pulled out the peanut butter sandwich he had made for lunch. It wasn't much, but it was all he had, and somehow it felt wrong to pass by without doing something. The old man's eyes fluttered open as Sam approached, and for a moment, the man looked at him with a mix of confusion and gratitude. Sam handed him the sandwich, offering a quiet smile. "I'm not sure if this will help," Sam said, his voice soft, "but I thought you might need it more than I do." The old man's hands trembled as he took the sandwich, his lips curling into a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, son," he said hoarsely, his voice rough like gravel. Sam nodded, feeling a strange warmth spread through him as he watched the old man take a small bite. As he turned to leave, he felt lighter, as if that small act of kindness had done something to change the course of his day, or perhaps his life. He continued walking to school, but something had shifted inside him. For the first time in a long while, he felt as though he had done something good, something that mattered. And as he walked, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, that small act of kindness would be the start of something bigger, something that could change everything. The next morning, the sun barely peeked through the heavy clouds as Sam woke up. The weight of the world felt like it had pressed even harder against his chest as he opened his eyes. The silence in their small apartment was suffocating, broken only by the soft murmur of his mother talking on the phone in the other room. Her voice was strained, her words clipped, and Sam could tell by the edge in her tone that the rent was still an issue, still looming over their heads like a dark shadow. He lay there for a moment, his mind wandering. He couldn't shake the memory of the old man from the day before, the man with the tired, weathered face and the gratitude in his eyes. It was strange how that small gesture had stayed with him, lingering in his thoughts like an unfinished sentence. He wondered if the old man had eaten anything else since then, if his hunger had been satisfied for the day. Sam knew it wasn't much, a sandwich and a simple act of kindness, but in a world so harsh and cold, it felt like it should mean something. After a few minutes, he dragged himself out of bed and dressed in the same worn clothes he had worn the day before. There was no time for anything more. The school bell would ring soon, and he had to get there early to avoid the crowds of kids who always found ways to make his life harder. He didn't mind the teasing as much anymore. It was just part of the routine, part of the world he had grown used to. But what bothered him more was the nagging thought that nothing ever changed. No matter how hard they tried, no matter how many times his mother worked late shifts or he did his best at school, they always seemed to end up back at square one. As Sam walked to school, his thoughts returned to the old man. He couldn't stop wondering about him, who he was, and why he had been sitting there in the cold, waiting. Was he just another lonely soul, drifting through the world, forgotten by everyone else? Sam tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on the path ahead. But no matter how hard he tried, the image of the man lingered, like an echo he couldn't escape. That afternoon, as Sam trudged home, the usual noise of the city seemed to be muted, the clamor of the cars and the distant voices fading into the background. But as he turned the corner near their apartment building, something stopped him in his tracks. There, parked in front of their small, crumbling apartment complex, was a sleek, shiny car, something far out of place in their neighborhood. It wasn't just any car. This was a luxury car, one of those expensive models that had polished chrome and windows so dark that they could have been mirrors. Sam stared at it, momentarily forgetting everything else. His heart began to race in his chest. Who could possibly drive such a car to this part of town? He took a few cautious steps forward, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. As he got closer, the car door opened, and out stepped a man. The first thing Sam noticed was his immaculate suit, dark, tailored perfectly to his frame, and a tie that gleamed under the faint afternoon sun. The man's presence was commanding, like someone who was used to being noticed. He had an air of confidence about him, but there was something else too, something that made Sam feel both intrigued and uneasy. The man turned, his eyes locking onto Sam's, and for a brief moment there was a flicker of recognition in his gaze. Then, with a small smile, he approached. "Hello, Sam," the man said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth, like it had been rehearsed 100 times. "My name is Walter." Sam blinked, surprised that the man knew his name. He couldn't recall ever meeting him before, let alone having a conversation. Walter's smile didn't waver as he stood before him, his hands in his pockets, looking every bit the part of someone who belonged in a world far removed from Sam's. I'm sorry," Sam stammered, "but how do you know my name?" Walter chuckled, a soft, knowing laugh that didn't seem patronizing, but somehow carried a weight of understanding. "I know you because of what you did yesterday, the sandwich you gave to the old man." Sam's eyes widened in confusion. You saw that?" "I did," Walter said, his voice filled with a quiet admiration. "It was a small act, yes, but it told me something about you. It told me that you still believe in kindness, even in a world that often forgets the importance of it." Sam stood there, stunned. His mind struggled to catch up with what was happening. How could this man know about that simple moment? It had felt so insignificant, just a small thing that he had done without thinking. But the more Walter spoke, the more Sam felt the weight of his words. "Can I come inside?" Walter asked, his tone shifting slightly, as if it were more of a statement than a question. Without waiting for an answer, he motioned toward the door. "I'd like to talk to you and your mother." Sam hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know why, but something about Walter's presence unsettled him. Still, there was a part of him that couldn't ignore the strange curiosity that had stirred within him since he'd met the man. "Okay," Sam said, his voice quieter than usual. As they entered the small apartment, Sam noticed how Walter's presence seemed to fill the room, his confidence almost tangible. Emily was sitting at the table, sorting through the pile of bills that had become a constant fixture in their lives. When she saw the man enter, she froze, her eyes widening in surprise. "Walter," he said, extending his hand with a calm, assured manner. "I'm Walter. I came to thank Sam for his kindness yesterday." Emily stood up slowly, confusion written all over her face. "Kindness?" she asked, her voice wary. "What are you talking about?" Walter smiled warmly, taking a seat without waiting for permission. "I believe that in this world, kindness is something we rarely see anymore. But Sam reminded me that it's still there, that people like him still exist." Emily looked at Sam, then back at Walter, the tension in the room palpable. Sam couldn't quite read his mother's expression. Was she confused, or just unsure of what to make of this strange, unexpected visitor? Walter continued, his tone now more serious. "I want to help," Walter said simply. "You've been struggling, I can see that. I know the rent is overdue, and I know it's not easy, but I think I can make things better for both of you. I want to offer you something, a way to change the direction your lives are headed." Sam's heart skipped a beat. He had heard this kind of talk before, but it never amounted to anything. People promised to help, but in the end, there was always a catch. He couldn't help but wonder what Walter wanted in return. I don't know," Emily said hesitantly, glancing at Sam. "We've never taken help from anyone before." Walter leaned forward, his expression softening. "Sometimes the help we need comes from the most unexpected places. You don't have to decide right away, but I want you to know that I'm here for both of you, if you're willing to accept it." Sam's mind was spinning. This man, this stranger, was offering them a way out of the mess they were in. But what did he want in return? What was the catch? Before he could voice his concerns, Walter stood up. "I'll leave you to think about it, but just know, the offer is genuine." As Walter left, Sam felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. His mind raced, trying to process everything that had just happened. He didn't know what this offer meant, but one thing was clear. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet understand. The door clicked shut behind Walter, and for a few moments, the apartment felt unnervingly quiet. Sam stood frozen in place, the weight of what had just transpired sinking into his bones. His mind raced, processing everything. He tried to recall every word Walter had said, but the man's presence had been so commanding, so confident, that it all felt surreal, as if they had just been visited by someone from a different world. A world Sam couldn't even imagine. Emily, still standing in the same spot near the table, let out a long sigh. Sam turned to look at her. She was staring at the door, her brow furrowed, her hands clutching a stack of unopened bills. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the quiet resignation that had become all too familiar. It was the kind of look he had seen 100 times before, especially after another late-night conversation about their finances. "Mom?" Sam said softly, stepping toward her. "Do you think we should we accept his offer?" Emily's eyes met his, and for a moment there was a flash of something deep in her gaze. Fear? Hope? It was hard to tell. But the truth was, she didn't have an answer. She didn't know what to make of Walter or his offer. They had never accepted help from anyone, never relied on charity or handouts. It wasn't in their nature. They had always struggled through, side by side, because that was the way life worked. At least, that's what she had always believed. "I don't know, Sam," Emily said, her voice tight. "It feels too easy, too good to be true." Sam's heart tightened. He understood his mother's hesitation. She had always been so strong, so independent, even when things were at their worst. The thought of accepting help from a stranger, especially someone like Walter, who seemed to have so much power and wealth, made her uneasy. But Sam couldn't help but feel that this might be the break they so desperately needed. For the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of hope, something brighter than the usual weight of their circumstances. "Maybe we don't have to take everything, Mom," Sam suggested, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Maybe we could just talk to him. See what he really wants." Emily looked down at the bills in her hand, her fingers tracing the edges of the paper absently. She exhaled slowly, then nodded. I'll think about it. But I want you to be careful, Sam. People like him, they don't just do things for free. There's always a catch. Sam wanted to believe Walter's words, to believe that the man had seen something in him, in them, that was worth helping. But his mother's caution echoed in his mind. Was it really as simple as it seemed? Could their lives really change? Just like that, because of a stranger's promise? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Sam went to school, his mind more focused on Walter's offer than the usual stresses of his life. He noticed the whispers between his classmates as they glanced at him, but he didn't care. They were talking about Walter's visit, the wealthy man who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, like some kind of knight in shining armor. It felt strange, being the subject of their attention, but Sam couldn't shake the feeling that maybe this was the beginning of something bigger than he could even imagine. That evening, after dinner, a simple meal of rice and beans that had become their staple, Emily sat down to talk. The weight of the decision hung in the air like a storm cloud, and Sam could see the fatigue in her posture as she looked across the table at him. I've been thinking about Walter's offer, she said quietly, and maybe we could take the help. But we need to be careful, Sam. I don't want us to lose our dignity in the process. Sam nodded, understanding. He knew how important their pride was to his mother. She had worked so hard for so many years, and the idea of accepting charity felt like an affront to everything she had fought for. But he also knew how close they were to the edge, how much longer they could keep pretending that everything was okay. I know, Mom, he said, his voice steady. But what if this is our chance? What if this is the way things are supposed to change? We don't have to take everything from him, but maybe we can let him help us with the bills just enough to get us through. Emily was silent for a long time, her gaze distant as if she were weighing the decision in her mind. Sam could see the internal battle raging within her. She wanted to say no, to keep their lives as they were, even if it meant scraping by. But at the same time, she was exhausted, and the weight of their struggles had begun to take its toll. Maybe, just maybe, Walter's offer was the lifeline they needed. Finally, Emily sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. Okay, she said softly. We'll meet with him, but I want to hear everything he has to say, and I want to know exactly what he's offering before we agree to anything. Sam felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had hoped, deep down, that his mother would see reason. He knew this wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the first step towards something better, something different. Maybe Walter wasn't the answer to all their problems, but he might just be the catalyst they needed to change their circumstances. The next day, Walter arrived at their apartment as promised, a little earlier than Sam had expected. He was dressed in the same impeccable suit, his presence still commanding. Yet there was a warmth in his smile that made him seem less distant than before. As he entered, he exchanged pleasantries with Emily, his tone polite, but still somehow confident, as if he already knew everything that was about to happen. So, Walter began, after they had all settled into the small living room, I'm glad you've decided to meet with me. I understand your hesitation. It's not easy accepting help from someone you don't know, especially when life has always been about doing things on your own. He paused, his gaze steady. But sometimes, the help we need doesn't come from where we expect it. And sometimes, all it takes is a small act of kindness to open the door to something better. Emily's brow furrowed, but she didn't interrupt. She simply waited, listening. I've been thinking a lot about your situation, Walter continued. I've seen how hard you've been working to keep things afloat, and I believe I can help. I'd like to cover your overdue rent, just enough to get you through this month. But that's not all. I want to offer something more substantial. I'd like Sam to participate in a special program I've arranged. It's an after-school program designed to help kids develop skills and interests that can change the trajectory of their future. Sam's heart skipped a beat. An after-school program? He had heard of programs like that before, ones that could give kids a head start in life, ones that could lead to better opportunities. The thought of it, of a chance to actually build a future, to have something to look forward to, was almost too much to grasp. I know this isn't easy to accept, Walter said, his voice gentler now. But I believe in Sam's potential, and I believe in your potential, Emily. You both deserve better than this. You've been struggling for too long. Sam could hardly believe what he was hearing. Was this really happening? Was he really being offered a chance, a real opportunity to change his life? Emily was still silent, her hands folded in her lap as she absorbed Walter's words. After a long moment, she looked up at him, her eyes tired but curious. "You're asking a lot," she said slowly, "and I need time to think about it. This isn't just about the money, it's about trust. Are you really offering this without expecting something in return?" Walter's smile never wavered. "I'm not asking for anything in return, Emily. I'm offering this because I believe you both deserve a chance to live a life without constant fear of what tomorrow will bring. You've been fighting for so long. Let me help you fight for something better." There was a long silence as Emily and Sam exchanged a look. Sam's heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment that could change everything. The days following Walter's offer were an emotional roller coaster for Sam and Emily. Though the promise of help loomed in their lives like a beacon, it was hard to grasp, to fully believe. The weight of their years of struggle, of scraping by, of facing eviction notices and bills piling up with no way to pay them, left them both cautious, hesitant to accept something that felt too good to be true. But something in the back of Sam's mind kept him hopeful, a small but persistent voice telling him that maybe this time, maybe for once, things could change. At school, Sam couldn't escape the whispers. He felt their eyes on him in the hallways, their curiosity thick in the air. Everyone knew about the visit from the rich stranger, the man with the sleek car and the fancy suit who had shown up at Sam's apartment. The stories swirled through the school like wildfire. And while Sam usually found comfort in his anonymity, today was different. Today, he was the talk of the school. "Did you hear?" One of his classmates, Billy, whispered as Sam passed by his locker. "The guy who came to your place, he's a millionaire, right? People are saying he wants to help you guys out." Sam tried to ignore the comment, but it stuck with him, gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. He was a kid from a rundown neighborhood, a kid who never got attention unless it was for being late or for not having the right clothes. But now, it felt like the entire school was watching him, waiting for him to explain how he'd somehow caught the eye of a millionaire. Was this the moment that would define him? Was he really the kid who got a second chance? Or was he just the subject of another gossip session? Sam tried to focus, tried to push aside the buzz of voices, but every word dug into him, making him feel smaller, more out of place than ever before. He had no idea how to deal with the new attention, how to navigate this strange world where everything seemed so different from what he had known. When he got home that afternoon, the atmosphere in their small apartment felt heavier than usual. Emily sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in front of her, her gaze distant. She hadn't moved much since Sam left for school, and Sam could tell that she was still grappling with Walter's offer. She was torn between the desperation of their situation and the nagging fear of losing their independence, of giving up something that had always been a part of who they were. Sam hesitated before speaking. He wanted to say something reassuring, but words always felt so inadequate when it came to their situation. Instead, he sat down beside his mother, his mind swirling with everything he had heard at school. He wanted to make her understand how much this could change their lives, how much it could mean for both of them. But he didn't know how to explain the hope that was starting to grow inside him, a hope that seemed fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice breaking through the silence, "what if this is our chance? What if we don't have to keep struggling like this anymore? Walter, he wants to help us. He really does." Emily didn't immediately respond. Instead, she took a slow sip of her coffee, her fingers absently tapping against the side of the mug. Sam could see the conflict on her face, the uncertainty that had taken root in her heart. She was so used to doing everything herself, to making sure Sam had what he needed, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. To her, asking for help, accepting help, felt like defeat. "I know, Sam," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's hard. I've spent my whole life doing things on my own. I don't know how to just accept help from someone I don't even know." I get it, Sam said, his heart aching for her. I do. But maybe, just maybe, it's okay to let someone else help for once. It doesn't mean we've lost. It doesn't mean we're weak. It just means we're letting someone who can do something step in. Emily's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, Sam saw a flicker of something other than exhaustion in her face. Hope, maybe. The idea that things could get better was so foreign to her, so out of reach, that even considering it felt like a leap of faith. After a long pause, Emily let out a heavy sigh. I know you're right, Sam, but what if we get burned? What if we end up worse off than before? Sam took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. What if it works out? What if this is the start of something better? Mom, we have to take a chance. For us, for you, for me. Emily looked at him, the weight of her years of hard work and sacrifice in her eyes. Finally, she nodded, though there was still a trace of doubt in her gaze. Okay, Sam, we'll meet with him. But we're going in with our eyes open. I won't let us lose everything for a quick fix. Sam smiled, relieved. It wasn't the perfect answer, but it was enough. He knew his mother better than anyone, and he knew how much this decision weighed on her. The fact that she was willing to take this step with him, to let someone help them, was the first sign of real change in years. The following day, Emily made the call to Walter. Her voice was steady when she spoke to him, but Sam could tell she was still uncertain. After the call, Emily sat back in her chair, letting out a breath as if she had just made the biggest decision of her life. She hadn't even mentioned it to Sam, but he could see the change in her face. Walter's coming by tomorrow, she said simply, her tone quieter than usual. Sam felt a surge of anticipation and anxiety. This was it. This was the turning point, the moment that could either make or break everything they had been struggling to build. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. Their lives would never be the same. The evening passed with an uneasy calm, both of them preparing for the meeting in their own way. Sam tried to study for his tests, but his mind kept wandering back to the upcoming conversation with Walter. He wanted to believe that this could be the answer, that the man's words had been genuine, that they weren't just being set up for a fall. When Walter arrived the next day, Sam was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to focus on his homework. Emily answered the door, her expression neutral but open, and Walter stepped inside with his usual quiet confidence. Good to see you both again, Walter said warmly, giving Sam a nod. I'm glad we could meet. I want to be sure you understand everything I'm offering, and I want you to ask any questions you have. Sam could feel the tension in the air, the weight of their uncertain future pressing down on the room. Emily led Walter into the small living room, where they sat across from each other, an air of formality between them, despite the casual setting. I want to be clear, Walter began, his tone still calm but with an edge of seriousness. I'm offering help. I'm not trying to change your lives in ways you're not comfortable with. I'm offering what I can, in the hopes that it gives you both a chance to live without constant fear of tomorrow. Emily glanced at Sam, then back at Walter. And what exactly are you offering, Walter? What's the catch? Walter smiled, as if he had expected the question. No catch. Just an opportunity. I've arranged for Sam to be part of an after-school program that will give him access to resources and opportunities that most kids like him never get. It's a chance to build skills that could open doors in the future. And, as I mentioned before, I can help with your rent and bills. Not indefinitely, but enough to give you time to get back on your feet. Emily's gaze softened, but she didn't say anything immediately. Sam could see the struggle on her face, the way her thoughts were racing. You're not just offering money? Emily asked quietly. No, Walter said firmly. I'm offering a chance to change things. But how you use it, how you move forward from here, is up to you. The choice is yours. Sam felt a surge of emotion, relief, hope, fear. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. This wasn't just about the money, the after-school program, or the rent. It was about trust. It was about believing that, for once, things could really get better. The hours following Walter's visit were a blur for Sam and Emily. The weight of the decision they had just made pressed down on them, suffocating yet promising. Sam could see his mother wrestling with herself, caught between her deeply ingrained independence and the knowledge that they simply couldn't keep going the way they had been. It was a paradox. To accept help was to admit defeat, yet to reject it was to keep fighting a battle they couldn't win. That night, Emily hardly slept. She lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. The room felt colder than usual, the silence louder, the space between them and their future growing larger with every passing minute. Sam, on the other hand, tossed and turned, his thoughts darting back and forth between his homework and what tomorrow might bring. But more than anything, he kept thinking about Walter's words, a chance. For the first time in his life, Sam felt the weight of a true possibility. By morning, Emily had come to a decision. She was still unsure, but her desperation for change had finally outweighed her fears. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Sam. If there was even the smallest chance that this stranger could help them, then she had to take it. After a quick breakfast, Emily picked up the phone. Sam watched her, his heart racing. This was the moment that would shape the next chapter of their lives, the moment that would either free them from their constant fight or bind them further in a way they couldn't escape. The phone call felt strangely impersonal, the receiver cold in her hand as she dialed Walter's number. As she waited for the ring to connect, Emily closed her eyes, steeling herself for what was to come. Sam couldn't hear the conversation, but he knew she was speaking carefully, weighing every word. She had always been so careful with what she said, never wanting to show vulnerability, never wanting to appear weak. When Emily hung up, her face was pale. She had made the call. Sam felt a rush of relief, but it was quickly tempered by the uncertainty that lingered in the air. "He's coming tomorrow," Emily said quietly, almost as if to herself. "We'll talk more then." Sam nodded, his own sense of uncertainty matching hers. He didn't know exactly what would happen next, but the decision had been made. Tomorrow could change everything, or it could leave them in the same place they had always been, struggling, scraping by, hoping for something more that never came. The day felt like it stretched endlessly before them. School was a blur for Sam, a long chain of minutes that didn't matter much in the grand scheme of things. The other kids continued to gossip about him, their voices a soft murmur that never quite left him alone. At lunch, he sat by himself, picking at his food, wondering how much longer his life would be this small, this insignificant. Would the rumors die down? Would people forget that a millionaire had visited his family? Or would they just keep watching, waiting for the inevitable downfall? He tried to push those thoughts away, but they clung to him like a shadow. He couldn't focus, couldn't escape the sense of looming change. The heaviness of the day didn't lift as he walked home. Instead, it seemed to follow him, growing with each step until he was at the door of their apartment. Emily was waiting for him when he entered. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The tension in her posture told Sam everything he needed to know. The waiting was unbearable. "I called him," Emily said without preamble. "Walter's coming by tomorrow." Sam sat down next to her, his chest tight with nervous anticipation. And I think we need to be ready. We need to be sure. I'm not going to rush into anything. But I'm hoping that this could be our chance to turn things around. For you, for me, for both of us. Sam looked at his mother, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. He knew how much this meant to her, how much she had carried on her shoulders for so many years. She had never asked for help. She had never allowed herself to hope like this. And yet here they were, on the brink of something they couldn't fully understand. "Mom," Sam said, his voice a little quieter than usual, "it's okay. We don't have to have it all figured out right now. We just have to take that first step. We're not alone in this anymore. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Emily blinked, surprised by his words, but something softened in her eyes. She reached over and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "I know, Sam. I know. But I've spent my whole life making sure you didn't feel the weight of our struggles. It's hard to let go of that control. I don't want to fail you." Sam gave her a small smile. "You haven't failed me, Mom. You never will. We'll figure it out together. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it as a team. And I trust you." Emily's eyes filled with emotion, and for a brief moment, the wariness seemed to lift from her. It was a quiet comfort, the kind that only existed between them, in the small moments where words weren't necessary. That night, neither of them slept well. Sam could feel his mother's restlessness next to him, and he knew she was going over every word of that phone call in her mind, playing out every possible scenario. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the quiet of the apartment punctuated only by the faint sounds of the building settling. When the morning finally arrived, it was almost a relief. Sam woke early, his mind already racing with questions. Would Walter keep his word? Would he be able to help? Or would this be another disappointment, another empty promise that led nowhere? At the breakfast table, Emily looked a little more collected than the day before. There was still a hint of uncertainty, but her resolve had strengthened. She was ready for whatever came next. The doorbell rang just as Sam finished his last bite of cereal. Emily stood up quickly, her hands shaking slightly as she wiped them on her pants. "That's him," she said softly. Sam stood up too, his heart pounding in his chest. They both moved to the door, and when Emily opened it, Walter stood there, his smile calm and assured. He looked just as he had the other day, but today, something was different. There was a sense of purpose in his demeanor, as if he knew that today was the moment where everything would shift. "Well," Walter said, his voice warm but carrying the weight of his words. "Shall we get started?" The door swung open fully, and Walter stepped inside, his tall frame filling the modest apartment. He gave Sam a reassuring smile as he walked past, taking in the cramped space with its peeling wallpaper, mismatched furniture, and the distinct scent of something old and worn. Sam could see the subtle change in Walter's expression, a flicker of recognition that perhaps the apartment wasn't the comfortable home he'd expected. But it didn't matter. Walter wasn't here to judge or criticize. He was here to help. "Good morning," Walter greeted, his voice low and steady, like someone who had come to bring a solution rather than just advice. "I know this is a big step for both of you, but I'm glad you made the decision to talk." Emily nodded, her hands clasped in front of her as if to hold herself steady. We're ready to hear you out, Walter," she said, her voice cautious but open. "But I need to know if this is real, if this isn't some kind of charity or just a way to feel good about yourself." Walter's smile remained calm. He could sense Emily's skepticism, and he didn't blame her for it. She had every reason to be wary. A millionaire offering help to strangers, especially strangers like them, rarely had pure intentions. He understood the weight of that distrust. "No, Emily," Walter said, his tone sincere. "This isn't about charity. This is about making a real, lasting change. And sometimes it takes one person to believe in another before they can believe in themselves." Sam could see that Emily was taking this in, processing the words. Her eyes flickered between Walter's steady gaze and the quiet tension that still clung to their apartment. He had hoped, prayed, that this moment would come, that someone would see them, truly see them, and offer a lifeline that didn't come with strings attached. "I don't want you to feel indebted to me," Walter continued, sitting down at their small kitchen table. "I want to give you both a chance, and I believe that Sam is capable of so much more than what this environment allows him to be. I've seen it before. I know it's possible." Sam felt a jolt of something in his chest, something unfamiliar and raw. It was hope, shining, bright, but fragile. The idea that someone could see him for more than just a kid in a broken apartment, someone who could be more than his circumstances, made his stomach twist with a mixture of excitement and fear. Emily sat down next to Sam, her hands still trembling slightly. She glanced at him, her expression softening just a little. "What kind of help are you offering?" she asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Walter leaned forward, his voice steady as he explained. "I've partnered with an after-school program that provides mentorship and development for kids in need. It's designed to help children like Sam tap into their full potential, giving them access to resources and guidance they wouldn't normally have. There are workshops, tutoring, and even connections to internships for older kids. It's not just about academics. It's about finding what they're passionate about and helping them turn that passion into something real." Sam blinked, absorbing the information. It felt too good to be true. There were programs like this, places where kids who didn't have the right connections, the right wealth, could go and be something. He had always assumed that success was for the rich kids, the ones with the clean clothes and parents who didn't stress about paying bills. He had never imagined that there could be a way out for someone like him. Sam began, but his voice caught. He cleared his throat, trying again. I don't know what to say. This sounds like a dream, but I don't know if I'm good enough for something like that. Walter smiled, his expression warm but unwavering. Sam, you're more than good enough. You just need someone to guide you. You're capable of so much, but you need the right environment to grow. That's all I'm offering. A chance for you to see what you can really do. Emily turned to look at her son, her eyes filled with a mix of pride and doubt. Sam could see how much this meant to her, how much she wanted to believe in this opportunity, but was also afraid of getting her hopes dashed. Sam could feel her tension, her desire to protect him from disappointment, but he also knew that this was the moment they had been waiting for. I'll think about it, Emily said. Though Sam could hear the crack in her voice, the unspoken hope that things might actually get better. But I want to make sure this is the right choice. I don't want Sam to be disappointed. Walter nodded understandingly. Take all the time you need. But let me make one thing clear. This isn't about me. This is about Sam, and this is about giving him a chance to be more than his circumstances. You've been through a lot already. This is a chance for something different, something better. Emily seemed to relax a little, the tightness in her shoulders softening. Sam felt a sense of pride surge within him. Pride for his mother, for her ability to hold on and push through, even when it felt like the world was against her. And maybe, just maybe, this was the chance they both needed. A chance to rewrite their story, to step out of the shadows of their past and into a future where they had more than just survival to look forward to. As the conversation shifted to logistics, when Sam would start the program, what it entailed, and how Walter would help, Sam felt a sense of disbelief wash over him. It was happening. It was really happening. A new beginning was unfolding before him, and he didn't have to navigate it alone. Walter was offering him the tools to build a future, but the real work would be in his hands. And for the first time in his life, Sam felt ready. After Walter left, the apartment felt quieter. But it wasn't the oppressive silence of uncertainty. It was a stillness that came with anticipation. Emily, for the first time in a long time, looked at Sam with a softness that wasn't just about worry. She seemed proud of him, and in that moment, Sam realized how much she had sacrificed to keep them both afloat. Now, it was his turn to show her that her sacrifices hadn't been in vain. The next morning, as the sun barely began to filter through the cracked blinds, Sam awoke to a sense of urgency in the air. His mother had always been the first to rise, but today she seemed even more hurried than usual, moving from room to room, muttering to herself. Sam could tell she was trying to hold it together, but the tension in her movements was unmistakable. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day Walter had promised that things might change, but the looming threat of their landlord's visit made it hard for Emily to fully embrace that hope. Sam quickly dressed and went into the kitchen, where Emily was pacing by the window. Her face was pale, and her eyes were dark with worry. She hadn't even made breakfast. "Mom?" Sam asked softly, walking over to her. "Are you okay?" Emily turned to him, forcing a smile, but the strain was evident. "I'm fine, Sam. I've got a lot on my mind today. The landlord will be here soon. I need to talk to him, try to buy us more time." Sam's heart sank. He knew how difficult it was for her to face the landlord, Mr. Daniels, who had been relentless in his pursuit of overdue rent. Emily had tried everything she could, begging, pleading, even offering to work off the debt, but nothing seemed to make a difference. She was worn down, her spirit almost broken by the constant stress. "Don't worry, Mom," Sam said, his voice firmer than he felt. "We'll figure it out. If Walter's really serious about helping us, then he'll come through." Emily nodded, but didn't seem convinced. She glanced out the window again, as if trying to see if Mr. Daniels was already approaching. The minutes felt like hours, and Sam could feel the weight of the moment pressing on both of them. It wasn't long before they heard the sound of footsteps outside the door. Sam knew it was him, the landlord. His heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one like a reminder of the relentless pressure they had been under for far too long. Sam held his breath, waiting for the knock that would inevitably come. And then, as if on cue, there was a sharp rap at the door. Emily froze, her body tense with anticipation. She looked at Sam one last time, her face pale, before walking to the door with slow, deliberate steps. Sam stood behind her, his heart racing, praying that things would go differently today. When Emily opened the door, Mr. Daniels stood there, his imposing frame filling the doorway. He was a large man, tall and stocky, with a permanent scowl etched into his features. Sam had seen him countless times before, always demanding money, always threatening eviction. Today was no different. "Good morning, Mrs. Reyes," Mr. Daniels said, his voice cold and matter-of-fact. "It's time to talk about the rent." Emily swallowed hard but stood her ground. "I've been doing everything I can, Mr. Daniels. Please, just give me a little more time. I'll get the money, I promise." Mr. Daniels shook his head, unimpressed. "You've been promising that for months, Mrs. Reyes, and the longer you take, the more I lose patience. This has gone on long enough. You owe me 2 months' rent, and I'm not going to wait forever. Either you pay me today, or you'll need to find somewhere else to live." Sam felt the familiar weight of helplessness press down on him. He could see his mother's shoulders sagging under the pressure, and it broke his heart. He wished he could do something, anything to fix this. But he was just a kid, and the world seemed so much bigger than he ever could have imagined. But then, before Emily could respond, there was a knock at the door again. Sam looked up, confused. The last thing he expected was another visitor. But when the door opened, Walter stepped inside, looking calm and collected, his presence suddenly commanding the space. "Mr. Daniels, I believe there's been some misunderstanding," Walter said, his voice smooth and confident. Sam's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment. Mr. Daniels turned, his eyes narrowing as he took in Walter's sharp suit and confident demeanor. "And who might you be?" he asked, his tone dismissive. He had no patience for anyone who wasn't willing to settle things his way. "I'm Walter Bradford," Walter said, extending his hand with a calm smile. "I'm here to discuss the situation." Emily's eyes widened with surprise, and Sam could barely breathe. "Walter? What was he doing here?" "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to reconsider your stance on the rent issue, Mr. Daniels," Walter continued, his tone unruffled by the landlord's initial hostility. "I've been made aware of Mrs. Reyes' situation, and I believe there is a way we can resolve this without resorting to eviction. I've also spoken with Mrs. Reyes about a potential opportunity for her and her son that could significantly improve their circumstances. But first, let's address this rent." Mr. Daniels scoffed, clearly taken aback by the interruption. "And what exactly do you think you can do about it? I've given her enough chances. She's behind on the rent, and that's the bottom line." Walter didn't flinch. "I understand that, Mr. Daniels, but what you don't understand is that life isn't always as simple as black and white. Sometimes people need a second chance, especially when they're doing everything they can to make ends meet. Mrs. Reyes isn't asking for a handout. She's asking for time. Time to get back on her feet. And I'm here to make sure she gets that time." There was a long, tense silence as Mr. Daniels stared at Walter, clearly weighing his options. Sam could see the conflict in the landlord's eyes, the pressure to maintain control, to assert his dominance in the situation. But Walter's calm, authoritative presence seemed to chip away at that facade. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mr. Daniels grunted. "Fine. You've got 1 more week, Mrs. Reyes. But that's it. I won't tolerate any more delays after that." Emily nodded, relief flooding her features. "Thank you. Thank you so much," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment. Walter turned to Sam, who was standing off to the side, watching the entire exchange in awe. "This is the first step, Sam," he said quietly, his voice carrying a note of encouragement. "This is the beginning of something better." Sam couldn't help the grin that spread across his face. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The impossible had just happened. The landlord had backed down, and for the first time in his life, Sam believed that things could actually get better. The days following the landlord's visit felt like a blur of emotions. The heaviness that had once settled in Sam's chest seemed to lift slightly, but it wasn't gone. The eviction threat still loomed in the background, and with every knock on the door, Sam felt his stomach tighten in anticipation. But there was something different now. The promise Walter had made to them was slowly becoming more real, more tangible, and for the first time, it felt like they had a fighting chance. Still, It wasn't just the landlord that Emily had to worry about. The pressure of their bills, the looming deadline for the rent payment, and the general feeling of being trapped in a cycle of poverty weighed heavily on her. She'd started her job training program, but it was clear that it would take time before she saw any real benefits. And Sam? He was diving into the after-school program Walter had set up for him with a sense of both excitement and fear. He wasn't used to being in an environment where people actually believed in his potential. That morning, as Sam packed his bag for the after-school program, Emily came into his room, her face set in a determined expression. "I've got a call to make," she said, her voice tight with nerves. "I'm going to call Walter. I need to talk to him about what happens next, about everything." Sam gave her a nod, though he couldn't hide the concern that flickered in his chest. He understood her hesitation. She wanted to make sure they weren't falling into some kind of trap. Walter had been generous, yes, but it was still hard for Emily to accept that help without the usual strings attached. The past had taught her to distrust people who offered things that seemed too good to be true. As she left the room, Sam grabbed his jacket and headed out the door. The walk to the after-school program felt different today. The sun was out, casting long shadows on the sidewalk, and the familiar noise of the neighborhood seemed less oppressive. Even the air felt lighter. Sam wasn't sure if it was because of the extended deadline from the landlord or the promise of the program, but he knew that he wasn't going to let this opportunity slip through his fingers. At the after-school center, the day unfolded with a strange mix of excitement and uncertainty. There were kids in the program from all different backgrounds. Some had been there for a while, and others, like Sam, were just starting out. They were all there for one reason: a chance to change their lives. Sam had never been in a place like this before, a space where everyone was encouraged to think bigger, to dream bigger. For the first time, Sam felt like he belonged. But even as he threw himself into the program, trying to absorb everything they offered, tutoring, creative workshops, and the promise of internships, he couldn't shake the worry in the back of his mind. Would this really change anything? Was he really ready to take on a new path when everything else seemed so uncertain? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing in his pocket. He pulled it out to see his mother's name flashing on the screen. Without thinking, he answered. "Mom?" Sam asked, his voice anxious. "Sam, I need you to come home. Now." Emily's voice trembled, barely controlled. "Walter's here. We need to talk." A cold chill spread through Sam. His mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. Why would Walter be at their apartment? Had something gone wrong? "I'm on my way," Sam replied quickly, not waiting for her to say anything more. He grabbed his bag and rushed out of the building, slung, his heart pounding in his chest. The streets that had felt so familiar and comforting now seemed distant and confusing. What was going on? By the time Sam reached home, he could already see Walter's car parked in front of the apartment. His stomach twisted with nerves as he climbed the stairs two at a time, his mind replaying the worst possible scenarios. He had seen Walter act with calm authority before, but Sam could feel something was different today. The weight of uncertainty had returned. As soon as he opened the door, the sight of his mother sitting at the kitchen table with Walter across from her only deepened his unease. Emily looked drained, her face pale, her hands folded tightly in front of her. Walter, though calm as ever, had a concerned look in his eyes that was hard to ignore. "Sam," Walter greeted with a nod, his voice steady but serious. "Sit down." Sam hesitated for only a moment before taking a seat. His hands were clammy, his breath shallow. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Walter glanced at Emily and then back at Sam. "We've got a problem," he said. His voice wasn't harsh or blaming, but it was clear that something had shifted. "It's not about the rent or the program. This is bigger than that. The landlord, Mr. Daniels, he's not going to back off. I've tried negotiating with him again, but he's threatening to escalate things, to move faster with the eviction if payments aren't made soon." Sam's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? I thought we had more time." Emily cut in, her voice strained. "We do, Sam. But Walter's saying that Mr. Daniels has started talking about taking legal action. He's pushing for an eviction hearing." The room seemed to shrink as the weight of the situation settled in. Sam's eyes flicked to Walter, hoping to find some sign of reassurance. But Walter's expression remained calm, calculated. He wasn't panicking, and that alone helped Sam keep his cool. "I know this is a lot to take in," Walter said, leaning forward slightly. "But we have options. We have time. But it's going to take more than just a few good intentions to fix this. I've made arrangements to connect with a lawyer who specializes in housing cases like this. We can delay the hearing, buy you more time, but we need to act fast, and we need to be prepared for what might come next." Sam's mind raced. He couldn't understand how things had gotten so complicated so quickly. He had thought that once Walter was involved, everything would fall into place, that they would have a chance to move forward without these looming threats. But Walter's presence, the seriousness in his voice, made Sam realize how fragile this moment truly was. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was real life. And in real life, there were no guarantees. They had to fight for what they wanted every step of the way. "You don't have to do this alone," Walter added, his tone softening slightly. "I've got the resources to help. We'll work through this together, but you've got to be ready for what comes next. It's not just about the rent anymore. It's about your future, Sam, about what kind of life you want to create, what kind of man you want to be." The words hit Sam harder than he expected. This wasn't just about fixing a few immediate problems. This was about shaping his future, the future he had always dreamed of but never thought he could reach. For the first time, Sam understood that Walter wasn't just offering them a chance to survive. He was offering them a chance to thrive. Sam looked at his mother, who had been silent throughout the conversation, her face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She wasn't asking for this fight. She never had. But Sam knew that she wasn't going to back down either. They had come this far, and now they had to see it through. "We'll do whatever it takes," Sam said, his voice steady now. He wasn't sure exactly what that meant yet, but he knew it was the right thing to say. He couldn't afford to back down. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. Walter nodded, a small but knowing smile crossing his face. "That's what I wanted to hear." The days following Walter's visit felt like a whirlwind of decisions, phone calls, and moments of quiet reflection. For the first time in what felt like years, Sam and his mother had hope. The storm that had threatened to destroy their lives wasn't over, but they could see a break in the clouds, a glimpse of sunlight. And for Sam, it was a strange feeling, one that both comforted and scared him. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about building a future. Emily dove headfirst into her job training program. Each day, she came home with a mixture of exhaustion and optimism. The skills she was learning were more than just the basics. She was gaining confidence, understanding that she was more than just the woman trying to make ends meet. She was a person with potential, someone who deserved more than just the crumbs life had given her. Sam saw it in the way she carried herself now. She no longer hunched her shoulders as if the weight of the world was on them. There was a quiet strength that had replaced her earlier weariness, and Sam knew it came from more than just the promise of a new job. It came from a sense of dignity that had been restored. As for Sam, he threw himself into the after-school program with an energy he hadn't known he had. The tutors, the workshops, the mentors, it all felt like a dream, a second chance. He spent hours every week in classes that encouraged him to think outside the box, to explore new interests, and to embrace the idea that his future didn't have to be dictated by his past. One of the mentors, a woman named Rachel, took Sam under her wing. She saw potential in him from the very first day, and she didn't let him slip through the cracks like so many other kids had. She was tough, but kind, a combination that worked wonders for Sam. She pushed him when he needed it, but also gave him space to grow. Every day, he felt like he was learning more about himself, about the world, and about the possibilities that lay ahead. But there was a nagging worry in the back of his mind. Despite the hope, despite the progress, the fear of failure still lingered. What if all of this was just a fleeting moment? What if the world was still too big and too harsh for someone like him to succeed? Those questions haunted him, but each time they did, he reminded himself of what had gotten him this far, the simple act of kindness he had shown to that old man on the street. That moment, that one decision, had changed everything. It had opened doors he never thought would be within his reach, and it had reminded him that kindness, though often overlooked, was powerful. One afternoon, just a week after Walter's visit, Sam sat at the kitchen table, trying to focus on his homework. Emily was in the living room, her voice low as she spoke on the phone with someone. Sam couldn't quite hear the words, but he could tell she was tense. The bills still piled up, the eviction hearing still loomed, but things were changing. They had to. He tried to push the worries aside and focus on the assignment in front of him, but his mind kept drifting. He remembered Walter's words. "It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about your future, Sam." Sam knew he couldn't waste the opportunity that had been handed to him. But there were still things that needed to be dealt with, and they were bigger than homework. They were about survival, and, for the first time, they were about truly thriving. That evening, after dinner, Emily sat down across from Sam, her expression serious. "We got a letter today," she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "It's from the job training program. They said that they've approved me for a full-time position. It's not exactly what I thought I'd be doing, but it's a start, Sam. It's a real start." Sam's heart raced. He had seen the effort his mother had put in, the long hours she spent studying and learning, and now it was paying off. She wasn't just making ends meet anymore. She was building a life for herself, for both of them. He could see it in the light in her eyes, in the way she held herself now, strong, capable, ready for what came next. "That's amazing, Mom," Sam said, his voice thick with pride. "You did it." She smiled, but it was a smile tinged with exhaustion. "I couldn't have done it without you, Sam. You've been the reason I've kept going. Every step of the way, you've made me believe that we can make it. You've given me the courage to fight." Sam swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. He wasn't used to hearing his mother speak like this. It was as though the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders, and in its place was something new. A lightness, a belief that better days were ahead. And that belief wasn't just coming from her. It was coming from him, too. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, pulling Sam from his thoughts. He glanced at his mother, who gave him a small nod, signaling that it was okay to answer it. Sam rose and opened the door, only to find Walter standing there, a smile on his face. "I thought I'd come by and see how things were going," Walter said, his tone light but sincere. Emily walked into the hallway to join them. "Everything's moving forward," she said. "I got the job. Sam's been doing great in the program. We're making it." Walter's smile widened. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. He turned to Sam. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, kid. Keep pushing yourself. Keep believing in the possibilities. You're not alone in this. You've got people rooting for you." Sam couldn't hold back the smile that spread across his face. "Thank you, Walter, for everything." Walter nodded, his expression softening. "It's my pleasure. You both deserve it." As Walter left the apartment that evening, Sam felt something shift within him. He was no longer just trying to survive. He was thriving, along with his mother. They had a future to look forward to, a future built not just on surviving the hardships of their past, but on reaching for something bigger, something better. That night, as Sam lay in bed, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. The long nights, the struggles, the doubts. He thought about the old man he had helped all those weeks ago, the way that small act had led them to this moment of change. It seemed impossible, but it had all happened. And now, with the future stretching before him, Sam knew that the path he was on was his to shape. He wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time in a long while, he felt the kind of peace that came with knowing that he and his family were on the right path. The weeks that followed felt like a blur of progress, each day unfolding with a promise of something new, something better. Sam's life had transformed in ways he hadn't even imagined possible. And as he walked through the quiet streets of their neighborhood one crisp morning, the sun rising on the horizon, he realized just how much things had changed. It was a Saturday, and instead of dreading the day like he had done so many times before, Sam found himself energized by it. The weight of the past, those crushing bills, the fear of eviction, the tension in the air at home, had started to lift. Emily's new job, though not glamorous, was a step forward. She had an office now, a place where she could learn and grow, a place that made her feel valued. She had her first paycheck a few days ago, and for the first time in ages, she didn't have to choose between paying bills and buying groceries. Sam's own life had changed in ways he couldn't yet fully grasp. The after-school program was no longer just a way to fill time. It was a door opening to his future. He had learned new skills: computer programming, creative writing, even basic carpentry. He had developed a curiosity he hadn't known existed within him, and that curiosity kept him going. Each day, he returned home with something new to show for it, a piece of work or a new idea he was eager to share with his mother. The program had even offered him an internship during the summer, a chance to gain real-world experience. Sam couldn't believe it. Just a few months ago, he'd been wondering how he was going to make it through another week. Now he was looking ahead, planning for a future that felt tangible, real, and full of possibility. But there were still moments when doubt crept in, when the reality of where they had come from felt overwhelming. Sam would catch himself thinking, am I really allowed to dream like this? Is it possible for someone like me to actually succeed? On those days, he would remember the old man. That quiet, selfless act had set this whole transformation in motion. The universe had a way of testing people, of asking them to show their hearts in the midst of hardship. Sam had passed that test. And now, as the future stretched out before him, he knew that all the obstacles he had faced were shaping him into the person he was meant to become. The small apartment they lived in was still cramped, the walls still cracked and peeling, but it no longer felt suffocating. There was a sense of peace now, a quiet acceptance that things were going to be okay. Emily and Sam no longer fought to stay afloat. They were swimming, steadily and confidently, in the currents of a new beginning. One evening, after dinner, Emily sat across from Sam, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp overhead. "Sam," she began, her voice full of emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about where we were a year ago. We didn't know if we'd make it through. And now I look at you, and I see the man you're becoming. You're not the same boy who came home worried about the next bill or the next eviction notice. You're someone with a future that's built on your kindness, your determination, and the support of the people around you." Sam swallowed hard. He hadn't expected the conversation to turn in this direction. It felt like a weight lifted off his chest, hearing his mother speak this way. She was proud of him. She believed in him, and he believed in himself, too. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've been the one pushing us forward, believing when it was hard to believe." Emily smiled, a soft, knowing smile that spoke volumes. "We've done it together, Sam. We've made it through the hardest parts. And now, we're going to keep going. No more looking back." It was then that Sam realized just how much they had accomplished. They had faced impossible odds and come out the other side stronger. And it hadn't been just about surviving. It had been about learning, growing, and transforming. As they sat there, in the warmth of their little apartment, Sam made a silent promise to himself and to his mother that they would keep moving forward, no matter the challenges ahead. He would never forget the lessons of the past, the kindness he had shown to a stranger, the strength of his mother, and the love that had carried them through it all. That night, as Sam lay in bed, the weight of the day still lingering in his bones, he thought about what Walter had said. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, kid." Sam finally understood what Walter meant. It wasn't about the money, the possessions, or the success he would achieve. It was about the choices he made, the way he carried himself, and the kindness he showed to others along the way. It was about the journey itself, the people he met, and the lives they touched. And as he closed his eyes, his heart filled with hope. The future was no longer a question mark. It was a road stretching out before him, full of possibilities. And Sam was ready to walk it, one step at a time. The story of Sam and his mother is not just a journey of overcoming adversity. It is a living testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of family. Every step they took, from their difficult days to the new opportunities, was guided by simple yet meaningful choices and acts that came from the heart. Sam was no longer the boy who only worried about the future. He realized that in life, we not only have the right to dream, but also the power to turn those dreams into reality, as long as we keep our faith and never give up. His mother, with all her sacrifices and belief, became not just a source of strength, but an embodiment of hope. Proof that even the most challenging circumstances could be transformed with determination and love. For Sam, the challenges no longer felt like insurmountable burdens. They were valuable lessons that helped him grow stronger each day. And as he looked toward the future, Sam understood that no matter how tough the road ahead may be, he was ready to face it and transform it into new opportunities. This story is not just about one family. It's a story for all of us, about the strength of kindness, the belief in the future, and the ability to change our destiny through the right choices. When we live with sincerity and help others, not only does our own life change, but we also have the power to transform the world around us. And for Sam, that road ahead will never be walked alone, because along it, there will always be love, perseverance, and kindness to guide him. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story. We hope it has inspired you and touched your heart just as it did for us. Your support means the world, and we are grateful that you joined us on this journey. If you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends and family. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions help us bring more content that can inspire and uplift. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the story, so feel free to leave a comment below. Until next time, take care, and remember, kindness and hope can change the world. Thank you again for being part of this experience. Stay tuned for more, and see you in the next video.